Okay, so our group ended up coming with several different ideas for the Cellphilm video, and everybody just kind of took different parts of anxiety and stress and compiled them together to make mini frames of how everything would be and kind of like chapters of the different videos. So this one focuses on relationship anxiety and stress within a relationship. So relationships can have a huge factor on mental health. And there's kind of like the ups and downs in a relationship, right? And one of the main things that this person that we focused on was like separation anxiety and also like insecurities in a relationship and feeling like you're not enough or feeling like they might do something or trust issues, things like that. And I thought of panning from a happy couple to like alone with your thoughts and then taking a side by side pan of when you're with your partner and happy and at ease and not stressed versus if they're gone on a business trip or something and you end up having to sleep alone or doing things on a regular that you usually do with them by yourself can lead to increased stress and anxiety. For these two different panel drawings, the first one focuses on exams specifically. A student would pan to an exam that a student is receiving back, and they failed the exam, so they're not good. Their levels of stress and anxiety are heightened. Then they go to study for the exam, and all they can think of is the previous exam, how they failed and how they didn't do well, and they're worried and anxious about failing the next one. Moving forward, um, that night they can't sleep the night before the exam because they're so worried about it that they end up not getting enough sleep and their brain isn't functioning properly and it leads to other problems in mental health. Panning over to the next two, we have an individual being pulled over by a car, and this is just generalized stress and anxiety for these two panels. Getting a ticket and being worried about it and not sure necessarily what's going wrong, what kind of ticket they're getting, whether they're getting a ticket. If they're getting a ticket, are they going to be able to pay it? Am I going to lose my license? Things like that. Trying to stop checking everything in their brain, trying to figure out what did I do wrong, even if they might not have done anything wrong. It's just a routine stop. Moving on to the next one, we have an individual in bed late at night and overthinking, and we would have the audio cast over of what the thoughts are going through their head at that moment and why they're not able to sleep. Like, did you do well on the test? Are they going to ask you to prom? Does he like me? Did I turn off the oven? Things like that that's constantly rattling around in your head. Symptoms of generalized anxiety. Moving forward again, these are more generalized anxiety, but these can also be tied to emotional context of anxiety and showing different levels of it on a more severe level and having to do with more personalized and sometimes medical things and, like I said, heavy emotional connection. Like a woman who's got a failed pregnancy test and she's crying in the bathroom. Moving to the next one, pan screen of two individuals talking to a doctor and having the doctor say, I'm sorry. Getting bad news from a medical professional can increase stress and anxiety and just kind of grief as well, depending on the news that you're being given. And again, in the bottom one, you see a man and a woman, and the woman is in bed and she's crying, and extreme stress and anxiety on her, and he is, as it is captioned, it's very, very clearly distraught, given that the woman is upset and crying. Moving forward, stress and anxiety. Anxiety happens to everyone. This is more focused on information based, how it happens, and that things being piled up more and more, as well as the addition of substance abuse if people are abusing substance on top of this, or have social anxieties to boot, kind of adds to it, adds fuel to the fire, makes it more difficult. The more deadlines and stuff you pile up, the worse it gets, and the more isolated a person becomes because they don't really have anyone to go with because they're so stressed out that they can't communicate properly what is going on in their lives. And again, this is more information panels, a child hugging their mother, and that anxiety and stress happens to anyone from any ages. It's not just a set person, and there's knowing the signs and symptoms and being able to stop and talk to someone, be able to open up to, and not only that, be able to identify it in the people who can't open up and talk about it. And there's a close up here on people's hands, and like I said, again, being receptive, noticing things before people, sometimes people can't reach out and say it, so being able to notice those signs and talk about it. And the next thing we would pan to, and this would be our end slide. Like I said, they're not always concurrent, these slides, in the way that they should be, but that would be our end slide, talking about giving information resources to people if you're having issues, who to talk to about it. And this is the final one that I have for the presentation, which should have come before the last one, but that's all right. Is specifically medical and COVID-related stress and anxiety for right now. There's a person with chronic illness and they're in the hospital and they're worried about, am I going to make it tomorrow? Are these happening? Is there COVID going around the hospital that I'm in? Stress and anxiety, what if this machine quits working, this, and that? Or what if my family feeling, like things like that? And then moving forward to the final one, there's a scene with an individual wearing a mask and being worried about that and worried about COVID, and not just like catching COVID, but also if you're working at a place of employment, did I clean the counter in the last 30 minutes? Have I done this? Have I done that? Going through the mental checklist and stressing and worried about COVID on top of just the stress of their job or the stress of going to school or taking their kids to work, things like that.
It's important to remember that stress and anxiety doesn't just matter in monumental, life-changing situations. That no matter how small the stressor may seem, it's just as important as the next. We wanted to expose and explain that no matter how small the stressor may seem, it's really important to notice the signs and symptoms and prevent it from occurring again. Signs and symptoms of stress and anxiety can vary from individual to individual, and in our storyboard we show that, as well as some people experience it in physical manners, while other people experience it more in mental ways. It's important to remember that stress and anxiety doesn't just matter in monumental, life-changing situations. That no matter how small the stressor may seem, it's just as important as the next. What may seem like small, stressful situations can also have large impacts on lives.
By showing a wide variety of individuals going through a range of stressors, we are hoping to establish the idea that everyone will go through a stressful situation at some point in life and will experience anxiety. It is important to acknowledge that everyone's experience of anxiety disorders is different. Not everyone who has an anxiety disorder experiences the same symptoms. The conclusion is what shows the steps and actions to take if someone sees stress and anxiety occurring in themselves or someone close to them. By giving people resources to access and find strategies, we are able to give people the power to intervene in their own lives while also fostering a sense of autonomy.
The reason we chose these approaches as a group is because when you look up the definition for anxiety and stress, it tends to be very blunt and straightforward. But as a person with feelings, that is not the case. The symptoms listed in that definition tend to include sweating, nausea, being fidgety, nervous, and so on. But anxiety can disrupt a person's life by impacting their relationships with others, their self confidence, and their ability to complete daily tasks in their home, work, and school settings. Stress and anxiety are caused by multiple different things. Overthinking and emotions tend to be the start of them, but not everyone will experience the same type of stressors that will lead to the buildup of anxiety and stress. It can be caused from literally anything. An example that was stated before would be someone writing a test or an exam. For others, it's not that big of a deal, may cause some kind of body tension and nervousness, but they can brush that off. Well, with some people, they will hyper-focus on it, creating unwanted stress and anxiety. Anxiety and stress tend to be stereotyped because people who have anxiety and stress are expected to have a full mental breakdown or a panic attack for no reason. When literally anxiety can just be someone biting their cheek and being spaced out in that moment.